Good morning, Diane.
Hey, Jared, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you doing?
I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I've got a huge head cold, but boy, I've had such a great week that I can't complain.
Well, Maine Web News listeners, this is Representative Diane Russell of District 120, Portland, right? Munjoy Hill area?
Yep, correct.
Excellent. Been up in the news statewide and nationally over the last few days, I should say. And I was just checking out your blog, Diane. You wrote on there that you drove to Madison, Wisconsin because if the levee breaks in Madison, we'll all be flooded. What's happening in Wisconsin from your point of view that's so important that you drove there to take part?
Well, there's a real uprising, I think, from average everyday working people who are really concerned about the direction that their government is going. When we look at who is funding some of these campaigns to get people elected, the outcomes of that often favor the people who write the biggest checks. And I think that is something that has been clear and evident in Wisconsin, and there's been a huge groundswell. That I apologize for my voice; it's disappearing, so I don't mean to whine for no reason. But there's been a huge, under the radar, people have been bubbling up. Whether you're on the left or you're on the right, people are really frustrated with the influence of corporate America on the government and the role that it plays. And there's a major wealth gap right now in this country, and this has nothing to do with the ability to balance a budget. So I didn't go out there just to support the unions. I went out there to support workers, and that seems to be the heart center right now of where the middle class is rising up, where the middle class is saying enough is enough with this wealth gap. It is democracy for the people,
Well,
by the people.
let's talk about the wealth gap. I think the United States at one point was probably the most egalitarian place there could be. There wasn't such a huge gap. It's definitely grown exponentially larger in the last few years. But what would you say to the private sector worker who's seeing a gap grow where you used to see if publicly funded positions, state workers, teachers making less money. Now you're actually seeing state workers make in some cases far more than private sector workers. So there's a wealth gap there. I think it was Rich Sebra and Doug Thomas last year did a clip that I put on MaineWebNews. They were talking the average state worker in Maine was making about $70,000 a year with the benefits, and here in Somerset County where I live, the average private sector worker is at about 30. So I think that gap is something that also has an emotional reaction from people.
Well, it certainly does, but I think you also need to look at the median. Oh, sorry, the 3-year-old in the background.
No problem.
She's adorable. You got to look at the median wage because don't forget some of those commissioners are making well over $100,000, and that skews the wages. Most of the state workers are not making are not making these exorbitant wages. And I think when the governor hired his daughter at $41,000, it set off a little bit of a backlash, and rightfully so. It wasn't just that he hired his daughter, but she's, and no disrespect to her, I'm sure she's...
Right, and she's making far less than the average.
I'm sorry?
I said we should acknowledge she's making far less than the average.
She is, but she's also making far more than a lot of people twice her age make in Maine.
Well,
I think that was the backlash for that.
She would make more than the average person in Somerset County. Well, let me ask you this back to the protest. Do you think that these protests are going to affect the outcome of what's going on? Do you think they've been productive?
I do, actually, because, I think they awoke a sleeping giant. I think they really hit a heart center of the country, and it really has become the symbol of all the frustration. And when you talk about the private sector worker being frustrated with the public sector worker, I think that all workers need to be working together to earn better wages, to earn fair wages, to protect our jobs from going overseas. I'm stunned that we continue to do free trade agreements with other countries when our own workers are training people to take their jobs in other countries for less wages. That is unconscionable. I want to see the words made in America again. It's absolutely incredible that we're sending the jobs overseas.
I think most people in Maine would agree with you on that.
Yeah, well, I think that most people would, and how we get there, we may differ about. We may disagree with how to get there, but I think this has been pigeonholed as a union issue. I gotta tell you that all the businesses out there are marching in. We were watching that in the Capitol yesterday as we were headed to the car and come home, and folks were marching in. There was a business owner was walking in himself with soup. He's like, hot soup for you guys. Who needs hot soup?
So a lot in the business community are supportive in Wisconsin. Do you think it's ethical for the legislators that actually left Wisconsin to do that? Does that set a sort of dangerous precedent?
Well, I think that it is the nuclear option, and it's certainly not an option people take lightly. You can also, the filibuster, as an example, in the U.S. Senate, that's supposed to be a nuclear option, and it is being used on every major form of public policy. We need to really think hard about what is a nuclear option. So people are totally acceptable, totally don't even think twice when the U.S. Senate stop public policy from happening at all, because you need 60-plus votes in order to even talk about a normal public policy, let alone anything controversial. Like every major public policy that goes through there has to have 60 votes in order to even have a debate. And yet these senators who really feel like, not only are the workers that dedicate their lives and their energy, the moms and the dads that still go home and feed their children and get them to school in the morning, not only are they affected, but I think most workers in Wisconsin are concerned about what's going to happen when their utility gets sold off at a no-bid contract. There's a lot of things happening on that, and I think that it is totally a nuclear option, but if I were in their shoes, I would have made the same decision. One of the reasons that I can be so vocal and I can make, a trip like this is because I am publicly financed. I'm beholden exclusively to my people, and by and large, people have been sending me emails and letters and notes and phone calls saying, we're super proud of you. I would never be able to do something like this if I had to think about where my checks were going to come from in 2 years.
And I think most people here in Maine are very supportive of the clean elections candidates. It's worked very well in the House and the Senate. I think it's unfortunate a couple of the gubernatorial clean elections candidates, they ran very dirty campaigns, and I think that's what soured people on it. In general, I think it's going to continue to be supported by the people. Clean election, the system is good.
People really do support the clean election system, and I think that I think Governor Walker particularly is clearly demonstrated that if there is any reason, any person who has more influence on state government, it is the governor. And in these economic times, it is that much more imperative that our elected officials, and particularly our senior elected officials or executives, be beholden to the people that put them there, and I mean the voters, not the corporations.
Let's talk about you personally for a minute, because as you're aware, not everyone was supportive of you taking the trip out to Wisconsin. I know you've mentioned you've got some calls.
There were a little miffed about it, but by and large, they don't tend to share my perspective or my values.
Right, well, you wrote on your blog that the Maine GOP sent out an email and posted your phone number. I would actually point out your phone number is on your Facebook. I wasn't able to confirm that any evidence of the GOP sending it out.
I actually had someone call me, and I don't know if they sent the email, if they sent my phone number in the email or what, but I was called by someone who happened to be a member of the Tea Party, who said, I just got an email saying that I should call you and tell you that I do not support what you're doing. I am calling you to tell you that I do support what you're doing. And I couldn't quite tell if it was actually a link or what have you. And you said that it's available on Facebook. It's a publicly available number. And in fact, when I learned that the GOP had sent something out, I tweeted my phone number and I actually changed my status update on my Facebook page to encourage people to call me.
Well, you represent people from District 120. Were there people from District 120 who were upset that you had gone on this trip?
I had one person that was disappointed, but, most of everyone else, I had people sharing tweeting or retweeting, I don't know what you call it these days, but, getting the story out there and sharing it to their friends and pushing it out. And I've had so many positive comments on my wall. particularly from constituents. A lot of the positive stuff that's on my wall comes from my constituents. It's important to note, some people, and I want to address this, some people are under the impression that I use taxpayer dollars to go out here, and that is categorically false. I was going to go on my own dime with my friends here, and this email came in my inbox that said you have money, and I thought, well, geez, this must be one of those UK or overseas scams. But there was something familiar about the address. So I opened it, and it said you have $30, and I thought, well, usually they're like $3 million if it's a scam. So I clicked on it. Someone had donated $30 to me out of the blue, and someone else said you've got to get a blog up, which is why I started blogging. And then she said you got to put a PayPal link up. So I figured out how to do that, and it just snowballed from there, and we raised over $3,000, and the balance is going to go. They're raising money out there right now. They're going to try and fundraise the $140 million budget deficit. I think it's brilliant. So, I still have donations coming in as we're driving home.
What will you do now with the extra funds? Will you donate towards that $140 million they're trying to raise?
Yeah, yes, that was what I was trying to say. That's where the balance of the money is going to go. We're going to, we're going to sort through our receipts and make sure all our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted, and the balance is going to go to the fundraising effort. They're actually passing the bucket. One of the things that I think was most profound, and regardless of which side of the fence you sit on this, I think if this had been a conservative or a Tea Party rally in the Rotunda, you would have felt the same way. But it was just packed, and people were just so energetic that it really reawakens your soul, and it changes you as a person. I am not the same person coming back to Maine as I was when I left, and I feel like there's a lot of work to do, but I have a lot more optimism about the future of our country right now.
So it's been a transformational experience for you. I've got to say, it looked to me when I saw the pictures in the papers and I watched the video footage on television, taking the issues out of it and the audio out of it and just looking at the scene, it looked like the Tea Parties from a year ago.
Yeah.
The same sort of spirit. And in fact, in your blog, you actually used some language that I would have expected to hear from the Tea Party. You talked about the people of Wisconsin and people in general standing up and taking their country back.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that there is a real push to make this, partisan, and make this, Republican versus Democrat, and it's really middle class versus corporate America. And the middle class is shrinking, and the sooner we realize that this is not Tea Party versus progressive liberal, that this is really about how do we restore the middle class, how do we create, bring that balance back that makes our country great. It's not, and the more people engage, the more people sit down and talk to one another, face to face, the more things that can move forward. I did this because I wanted to feel what it was like to be engaged in that profound moment. And I think anybody who takes a journey and participates and engages in democracy becomes a better person. And I think that our country becomes a better country every time someone does something like this. And I don't care what side of the fence you sit on. We are all Americans. We all want a middle class. We all want a better life for our children.
Well, I think that, I would agree the middle class is shrinking, and I agree with what you had said about NAFTA and GATT and the things that are contributing to shipping our jobs overseas. But I think one of the things that makes people upset is they see in the private sector, the middle class is all but extinct. But the public sector middle class has grown at the same time. I think that's one of the things that really makes people upset. And when they see, teachers who might be making $80,000 or $90,000 a year on strike, and they're seeing the private sector middle class become extinct.
And people get scared. I mean, when your economics are not secure, people often start looking at what other people make. To compare what teachers make in Maine to what they make in places like Wisconsin is really unfair, because we have low wages generally.
Well, let me ask you this. I know we talked about, you had a few constituents from 120 that were upset. Most of them were supportive. What would you say to Maine veterans who might be upset that you missed the Veterans and Legal Affairs Committee meetings yesterday?
Well, if there are veterans that are concerned about that, I'm sorry, but I mean, I think most of the veterans that come to my committee know how dedicated we are, and we didn't actually take up any veterans issues yesterday. They were primarily a couple of election reform issues that are sort of routine election issues, and wine tasting, which has been an ongoing debate. And for work session, all the stuff was unanimous votes except for one bill, and I'll be able to vote on that tomorrow. Friday when I come back. So I haven't really missed anything.
Were you able to make any contributions through other legislators or anything like that to the meeting?
Yeah, I mean, I've been following. I've been keeping in touch with my legislators who are on the committee, and they've kept me informed. I had a conversation with one of them last night just to keep up to date, and I got to be honest. Legislative work isn't just committee work. The few people that did call me negatively, but also the people that called me positively, when they called, I picked up the phone. I said, "Hello, this is Representative Diane Russell," or "Hello, this is Diane." Part of being a legislator isn't just being at the committee every single moment of the day. No legislator is ever at their committee. Well, no, I shouldn't say no legislator ever, but most legislators are not at their committee every hour of every day. I've been emailing back and forth with constituents on issues. There's some folks in the community that are in Portland that are seriously concerned about immigration, and I've been emailing back and forth about that. Been emailing about election reform issues with folks and planning for our work session on Friday. Just because I wasn't actually in the committee room, A, does not mean that I didn't know what was going on. B, does not mean that I missed any votes. And C, does not mean that I wasn't doing my job. I was just doing it remotely like a lot of legislators do.
Well, I did hear, actually, that, it's common during February vacation week, some legislators actually take vacations with their families.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not an unheard of thing to be gone this week.
Only if everybody's upset about me being away, it's only because I got unexpected media attention.
Are you aware that apparently Van Jones is calling for all leftists to be at state capitals across the nation at noon on Saturday? Have you heard of this?
Yeah, I have. I'm not actually going to be able to go. I would have otherwise, because, and I don't think it's just leftists. I think it's people that are working class, that care about working class issues, but I could be wrong. You could have used that word. I actually am otherwise committed that day because I'm delivering a speech at the medical marijuana conference about my marijuana bill. Well,
I know that you got a little cold there. You're fighting this morning. Representative Russell, have a safe trip back to Maine.
Thanks. We're almost there. We're in Massachusetts now.
Great. I'm sure we'll hear more from you when you get back. Thanks a lot for joining us. You have a good day.
Yes, you too, Jared. Thanks.
Take care. Well, that was Representative Diane Russell of Maine District 120 in Portland, the Munjoy Hill area. And this is Jared LeBlanc with Maine Web News, keeping you up to date with all the latest events and happenings around the state. Go to www.mainewebnews.com for all the best in local, national, and world news.